right. Thanks for coming here, Darin. Welcome to episode 3 of How Does This Help?
Thanks for having me.
You're
Happy
welcome.
to be here.
Well, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell people why you're here.
My name is Darin Mann. I'm the chair of the Village Cooperative. It's a collective down in Fair Park, Rose Park area of Salt Lake City, where our mission is to feed a 3-block radius through intensive urban farming and permaculture techniques, as well as cultivate a spirit of healing and connection through highlighting local artists and community connection through monthly events.
Awesome. Can you go into a little bit of the detail of how you're going about doing urban farming? And even, I didn't even know what this permaculture was until about a year ago. So I think there are a lot of, I think everybody I run into even doesn't know what it is. So I think that'd be good to kind of touch on what permaculture is.
Well, I think it's good to start with the journey of how you find permaculture, because I feel like everybody's starting to understand what that is.
Okay.
So maybe I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. So I worked for the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016, organizing Utah, and I became an environmental lobbyist for the Utah Rivers Council, and mainly working to save the Bear River and the Colorado River and Salt Lake, because we have water barons that are constantly doing these huge disastrous projects. And I started to get integrated with farmers, trying to save their farmland from getting flooded from the inundation of water, which would happen if we diverted and built 3 dams along the Bear River corridor. Not only would that destroy our lake, but it would flood all these generational farmers that have been farming for 5 generations or so. And I started to interact with these farmers and work their crops, eat dinner with them, and then I really saw that there was a connection of like how we already have the resources that we need here, and the farmers are trying desperately to preserve what we have. And then I started to get involved in the urban foodscape, and I got introduced to permaculture from my friend Ricky Longino, and she's an incredible woman who has a cooperative called the Mobile Moon Co-op, which is a queer-led cooperative which focuses on herbal remedies and medicines. And so she really taught me a lot about permaculture. And I worked with her through my capacity at the Green River Lunchbox, doing a gleaning organization, which is essentially harvesting fruit in people's backyards or on public property, or sometimes even private property if you want to be guerrilla about it. And then we would then distribute that fruit or veggies, whatever we could glean, to senior centers throughout the valley, food banks and food pantries and things like that. And then I started to see that while this work is really good, there's like a puzzle piece missing. And what it is for me, is it's almost like we're putting Band-Aids on the problems that we have as a society by, we're harvesting all of this excess fruit, but we're just giving it to a food pantry, which is this huge distribution center run by corporations like Walmart and whatnot, where they just dump their, carb-intensive, crappy produce and then give it to those experiencing poverty. But what we really needed to do was build a society that is really independent and resilient and can rely on itself, and is using the resources available to empower each other for the ultimate destination of self-determination between its community members. And through my relationship with Ricky Longino and my buddy Michael Kundick, I've really learned that permaculture has this really holistic way of looking at how we interact with the world, right? They have this Venn diagram that you can find with a quick Google search, permaculture principles. They have 12 principles, but then they also have a Venn diagram where you have, before you decide to do anything, if you're trying to live permaculture, you're trying to think if it falls within this Venn diagram. And you have, in the upper left, you have, care for the people. Is this going to positively impact the lives of myself and those around me? Then you have care for the earth, is what I'm doing and have positive impact for the earth. And then the last circle is care for the future. And you want to hit right in the center. You want to make sure that you're really trying to hit all three of those principles whenever you take an action. And so the Village Cooperative was really spawned from that because we saw a need where in where I live, it's what's considered a food desert. So while there are grocery stores about 2 miles away from where I live, well, there's one. A lot of people don't have access to healthy produce, especially if they're impaired in any way or have a disability that doesn't allow them to walk and whatnot. And also, it's a big corporation. It's not like a resilient, locally grown and sourced food system. So the Village Cooperative, we're really trying to meet people's basic necessities first by building a local solidarity economy on the ground with food, you know. And so our mission is to feed a 3-block radius and really make sure that we're reducing our carbon footprint by hyper-localizing where we're distributing our food, and then also cultivating that community connection. Because there's one thing that we've lost in this society as technology is moving forward and we're getting Amazon deliveries, you know, right at our doorstep. We're forgetting that we live with people around us all of the time, and we're not connecting with one another. So if we can start to connect people with their food, like one thing I always say, the best way to radicalize somebody and help share the future with them is underneath the shade of a fruit tree, harvesting it together. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, what, you know, if you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever. If you're harvesting food together, you'll start to see how similar we really are.
We all have the same needs and have all the same desires until all those needs are kind of filled. Everybody's kind of like crawling over the top of each other. And you saying like you have these delivery, Amazon, I'm even thinking like Uber Eats and stuff. People aren't even going to fast food anymore. People are paying more to have fast food delivered to them. And I see with technology a future where we as society are more depressed. We're more antisocial. We haven't developed these social skills to go into environments or areas where we can really be pushed and grow. And I think that it does start with looking at everybody as a person and not just like, hey, like you have nothing to offer me, and so I'm not going to interact with you. And nowadays, with everybody on their phone, it's almost if you go to talk to somebody, a stranger, and especially if they're on their phone, they're almost like, what do you want? Do you want $100? What do you want from me? And it's almost like we, from these corporations, who are always telling you need, and buy, and then we can't afford to really give in the places and do the places we need to.
Well, and I mean, it's so easy to get disconnected, like, from your relationship to what you're consuming and what's happening around you if you're not consciously interacting with it. And that's what I love about our cooperative is it's right on the corner of a busy street, directly adjacent to a park. And so everybody can see it. Kids run by and they're watching all this food being grown, and they're watching us build our hugelkultur mounds, which I can digress for a minute, but hugelkultur is where it's this German gardening technique where you dig a 3-foot trench and then you take big ass logs and you throw them in with twigs and manure and green waste, and then you cover it all back up with soil, and it like supercharges that garden, and then you can cut it to contour with the ground, and the water will be absorbed into these swells that you've cut. And in our high desert climate, it's really a wonderful way to bring those resources in. And so being on the corner, these kids and all my neighbors, they're seeing these regenerative earth practices being displayed for them right in front of their eyes, and they're knocking on my door and seeing, hey, what are you doing? What is this? You know, and it really allows that connection. And then as more and more people become cooperative members and start joining our CSA program,
what does CSA stand for?
Community Supported Agriculture. Once they join that program, and they're starting to get food weekly, coming to the farm and interacting with me or any of the other cooperative farmers. It really brings that home vibe, because I don't know if you've ever been to like a farm out in Cache Valley or
I have
wherever.
cousins who are in Idaho who been multiple different farmers. I used to go up there about a week when I was growing up. I'd go out there for a week during the summer.
Okay.
It's a completely different world.
Yeah, right. And people can like walk. I've walked on several farms before, and they usually have little farm stands, and you get to meet the nice old lady that's been doing it for ever.
Yeah.
And she's very warm and kind, and you're buying this food, and you're like, I can't believe how cheap it is, right? But here in these urban areas, we're so disconnected from that. We don't even understand what that looks like, and we're in these really gray cement like cities that are just very lifeless in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The only green that you're really seeing are trees and Kentucky bluegrass, right?
Yeah.
You're not seeing indigenous plants, you're not seeing fruit trees growing around, raspberry bushes, nut trees, what have you. And so you're not really seeing the abundance of life that you could really see in our cities. And it harkens to the idea that we have to really look at how we're treating our aggregate green spaces, our spaces that are not necessarily being used, but we're not even cultivating them to bring life into our world, right? So the project that we have, that hugelculture project I was talking about, we've cut swells to contour so that we catch the rain, but then we're also cutting in 2 ponds and a little stream, and we'll line it with logs, and we'll down mushrooms into that will hopefully encourage ducks to come nest and eat the slugs that want to, try and eat our mushrooms. And then it's all about creating these closed loop systems.
You're self-sufficient, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they do take a larger time investment, than your traditional market garden, right?
Yeah.
So we do have market gardens, because market gardens, they really do produce a lot of food. And so if you do want to feed people, I think it's all about finding that balance of how you can do sustainable market gardening, but then also start to transition using permaculture practices to closed loop systems and starting to rebuild our ecosystems. Because here in the Salt Lake Valley, this is like a breadbasket for us, and we've paved over it all, right? And now so all this farmland that used to be here is no longer here.
Yeah.
But we still do have a lot of open spaces. People have a lot of big yards and things like that. And the house behind mine, we're turning his property into a garden as well. He's a cooperative member, and across the street. So it's already.
So you're encouraging people to, if they have a backyard or wherever they can contribute, like come to you guys, and you guys can collaborate with them to say, hey, how can we turn your backyard into this self-sufficient closed loop system that you might have to maintain and grow yourself over the years, but it's going to help out where they're at and spread this.
Yeah, but that's actually the beauty of cooperatives, right? And that's why we are ultimately a cooperative. And right now our focus is on food, but this kind of segues into why we need to build a cooperative economy, is because not everybody wants to farm, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody is inspired by that. They just don't want to spend the time. But if we're really trying to build a village, which we are, right? A village that feeds a 3-block radius, all of the members reside within those areas, then you start to get like my neighbor, for example. He's a carpenter. He's a handyman. He's helped us build our walk-in cooler and things like that. Then you start to build a cooperative, an LLC, let's say, on a carpentry cooperative. So then you're promoting local carpenters, and you're hiring those instead of some corporate franchise. You're empowering your neighbor to come work on your roof
instead of buying IKEA stuff or the stuff that's built to be cheap and work, but not work for long periods of time. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that sorry, I wanted to go back to you talked about these great buildings we have, and I think it's important to point out that we don't have you walk around certain parts of downtown Salt Lake, for example, there's like art, but it's very select. I recently read this article that I think it's in the UK. They are trying to build these houses or buildings that have this certain, I can't remember what type of material it was, but it was conducive to moss. And then so like the building still had windows and all this stuff like that, but wherever it would have normally been like concrete or these like slabs of just unbeautiful gray, it's now moss is able to come in, which moss is one of like, apparently one of the, really takes out CO2. So you could have these cities that, like New York, for example, apparently they're saying there's actually like particles of dust breaks and also like that because there's not enough natural wind to come through these and blow stuff and give fresh air. There's too many buildings, where these moss could really kind of help provide a natural filter to these cities, which is really, I think, fascinating, especially when it comes to the idea of you guys could have this 3-block radius and you guys go like, hey, let's have this place not only just survive but thrive, and you get better oxygen and air. I mean, Salt Lake's known as one of the worst, like during the winter especially, one of the worst CO2. Like they're like, don't go out, like so many red flags. It's like, don't go out running, don't breathe the air. And more and more every year I'm seeing people wear these doctor masks, and I've caught bronchitis the last 2 years. Like, and so it's like, what's going on? But
well, yeah, and I mean that's why, you know, like, and there are all of these solutions that we could revitalize our green spaces and, you know, start to plant trees along the ridge lines of the mountains and start to create a funnel to push out air. There's a lot of really cool, interesting things that are happening that are happening and could happen if we just kind of plant that seed. And part of the problem is we don't have the economic wherewithal or support to really do that. And I mean, it's there, but it just needs a conduit, right? And then, so the Village Cooperative is a wonderful model because you can do it on a small scale, on a 3-block radius, feeding people, starting, highlighting local artists, cultivating community through monthly events, educating people on what is happening, how we're really focused on feeding people and connecting them with their neighbors and building a resilient community where everybody has a vote who joins the cooperative. It's more democratic, and you have these people that are starting to essentially join in a town hall, you know, on a monthly basis and start to connect and then empower each other. But what's really cool about that is as these people empower each other and they start to collaborate on regenerative earth practices and helping each other build things, they become more economically independent as a community because now they're relying on each other. And then once you build that template, then you can actually replicate it and move it somewhere else. And that would be the way to start to cultivate the seeds, right? So
I'm sorry, continue.
No, yeah, so you plant the seed, which is the Village Cooperative, you know, growing a market garden and starting to feed people in a 3-block radius, doing it conscientiously by distributing via bike, so you're not contributing more carbon into our air and whatnot, and you're also not contributing to the carbon of busting in tomatoes from Cache Valley or Idaho or wherever. You're getting them right from your neighbor, right? I can't emphasize that enough. Right? But then you take that formula and you so once that starts to sprout and grow and you have a solidified 300 member base of people that are collaborating through farming, through, you know, helping people repair their houses and doing carpentry and highlighting local artists through music, we do community events called Residents Building Roots. And a lot of artists, since we've been paying them and highlighting them, have started to see an increase in their paid gigs because, you know, we've kind of given them a platform to start sharing their art and sharing, whether it's music or people crafting jewelry and necklaces or painting. That just gives people an outlet to this free event where they can start to interact with one another. And then you start to see money going back into the hands of people that reside within this area rather than, you know, going to their Smiths and paying a big corporation that buses all this food around.
Yeah.
Instead of going to McDonald's, instead of going and buying jewelry at Walmart or whatever, they're buying it from Joe, who went up into the mountains and harvested some stone and made this really beautiful necklace.
Yeah.
And then you're having this money circulate within the local community, and then as you start to pool and build a stronger base of financial independence away from our current economic system, we can say, look, this is working, let's move it over. Oh, you live in Mill Creek and you have some property that you want to start farming? Well, we've built the back end through, cultivating a Salesforce system and QuickBooks, and this is how we did it, and this is how we manage our members, these are our bylaws, and this is how we really started to do outreach.
So you have an architecture on the back end to make sure that all this is being tracked and measured, so you're not just like talking about stuff up in the air. You can actually say, hey, this is how much we're producing, this is how much we're giving back to the community, this is how quick we're growing, which I think is fantastic. As far as like if I was somebody who wasn't living within a three block radius, do you want me to come to this?
Absolutely.
Do I pay, like, what is the cost to become a membership, or what is the actual application process to becoming a member?
So right now we've ratified $10 a month to become a member, or you could work, you could volunteer, you could come to our weekly garden events on Saturdays and Sundays and volunteer your time, and you would become a voting member.
How much time would that be compared to
roughly? It looks about 2 to 4 hours a week, depending on the season. Where we're at in the season, like in the winter, there's really not much to do. So you're donating your time, and then of course you get access to any produce that's grown, especially if you're volunteering. You get access. But that's essentially how that goes. And if you don't live within the 3 block radius, helping us solidify this structure and coming and volunteering and learning how we interact with the community around us, learning our farming practices, and just enjoying our community events. You're supporting something that's really trying to emphasize building resiliency on a local scale. And then hopefully you can build one in your own area, and we would love to help with that. So it's like, it doesn't matter if you live 3 blocks away. I mean, look within your city, and there's a cool thing happening underneath the shade of the freeway. Come on down and see us and interact and learn. And I mean,
what's the address apparently?
It's cool. It's got some numerology in there. It's
cool.
777 West, 500 North.
No way, dude.
Yeah.
I love 777. It's one of my favorite ones.
Yep. So the kingdom of creation right there. We actually have a lot of people who don't live within the 3 block radius right now that are coming and helping, and they have so many skills, and they see the merit of what's happening, and then we can franchise it, because we also have, in partnership with the Utah Permaculture Collective, there's guilds that are popping up everywhere, but they don't really have a location. They don't have any foundation, and they're really focused on educating people about permaculture. Where the Village Cooperative steps in is we have a lot of, myself, I'm really, I have a lot of experience community organizing and building back-end structures. Through my work with the Green Urban Lunchbox, I know how to handle a distribution model of, handling 80,000 pounds of produce, and where do we distribute this? How do we develop partnerships? And so those back-end models I'm very familiar with. And so we need to build that in a way to, especially with our nonprofit model, nobody owns any of the equity that happens within the nonprofit. It is directly for the community, right? If I were to die tomorrow, the Village Cooperative is still here, right? And if nobody owns it, nobody's going to inherit it. The community is going to inherit it, right? And I think that's really cool, right? Because it's all of us together that are building this structure. And so as you start to move it out to other communities, you can literally just take that nonprofit status and physically sponsor another location and hand them the back end CRM of Salesforce or whatever, and give them a leg up, right? Because I think a lot of people are really nervous, they're hesitant, like, oh my gosh, why would I even start farming? Why would I even start cultivating community? That sounds crazy, but when you see how empowered you are. So last year we installed a market garden, built a walk-in cooler, and our hugelculture project, spending about $7,000. If you were to equate that to what it would cost if you paid somebody to do that instead of like getting your friends together and pulling out some shovels, it would cost probably about $25,000 to $30,000.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but we did that paying, basically for materials and things like that, and then just getting together, having potlucks, sharing in friendship, having a beer, digging some holes,
getting dirty.
Just bullshitting as we build this beautiful world that we want to see.
That's awesome.
Right?
I think that labor is something that we, because like as I went to school to go to college so that I wouldn't have to do labor work, and when I was younger, I was like, oh, I could own a house that I have a maid and I have a guy who comes and mows my lawn. And I don't have to do anything except for worry about making money. You know? I think this is cool because it provides a deeper purpose than just making money. It's contributing to something bigger than yourself, which I think there's a lot of people out there who they don't know what their why is. They know what they do and how they do it on a day-to-day basis, but they're waking up going, why am I doing this? And they're getting depressed and, again, antisocial because they're sucking into more of their phones. And then you have, where I think the society is kind of changing a little bit, but there was a period of time where I felt like everybody was just reaching across the phone and strangling the other person for just sharing an opinion one way or the other. Like, anywhere I looked, it was this, everybody's attacking each other. But I think it's because we removed the face of another person, And so I think the beauty of that is you're bringing people into the community. I mean, I've lived in this apartment complex for 2.5 years now, and the only two people I kind of got to know was the person across the hall from me and the person below me. But they were such a mess of a person. Like, one of them was an alcoholic, and the other one, I'm pretty sure, was like dealing like hard drugs out of his place. And it scared the crap out of me to even continue to explore the rest of this community. And sometimes it's kind of scary nowadays to like go door to door and be like, oh, neighbor, we have cookies, But what a cool way to like go to a place where it's like anywhere you have this place that you can go to. And I even think about it like, I growing up LDS, there's a church house on every corner. What if every church house on every corner was a farm or a co-op? And everybody, instead of missionaries going and knocking on doors, it was missionaries delivering stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like there's so many cool aspects to it that I think that you're hitting on. That I think that there are so many people, including myself, who have grown up LDS and have left the church and go, what else is out there? And I actually had a really bad faith crisis, and if I would have had something like this, or it's like, well, Mike, go over here, there's a bunch of people who just care about people and like are friendly and want to grow some fruit and like or fruit veggies, take it easy. Like, I mean, I even just imagine myself being able to go over there and, as weird as it sounds, just hang out amongst vegetables and fruit or just this growing thing and just enjoy. Like parks, for example, are made for people, but what if we were treating these areas that were more sacred and wasn't meant for people to go and do these recreational activities, but it's to go back and experience life how it was before civilization and modern stepped in. And I see how this pebble, dude, you're throwing this in this pond is making this ripple. And so that's why I'm so thankful you're here, spending your Thursday night sharing this message. I think everybody needs to hear this, and I think that like the cool thing about your business is you're starting simple, and that's the easiest way to do is start simple, start with food. It's one of the necessities. I think we were talking before, and you were like, "Hey, we want to hit all these." We were talking about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And can you kind of explain that as far as like how you guys are trying to help that out and fill that bottom part?
So the reason we're starting with food first is it's a great tool to educate people and get them connected with the earth, right? But also it meets their basic necessities: food, water, shelter, sleep. Their physiological needs, right? And then as you move up the ladder towards self-realization, actualization, or self-determination, if I remember right, then you start to have, community connection, which we're fostering with our residence building roots events, where we have local vendors come out, local flower growers and local artists, and we just throw on a fire, and it's a free event with a suggested donation and some farm to table food for you. Usually we cut up some squash, make some squash soup or whatever, and it's just a free event at the park, and that's another way, because people need that connection.
Yeah.
That's another pillar of the pyramid, right? And then as they start to get these needs met, then they start to get self-actualization, self-determination, and they realize that, oh man, I could do this too. I'm just as powerful as anybody else around me, right? And like when you're talking that spiritual crisis that you were in, right? Like I've been there too, right? And also we're afraid to connect with one another, right? Like when I was running for office, I was knocking doors, and I would go where nobody else wanted to go. I went to crack dens and all that stuff, and I met this woman. She had some gang affiliations, and most people would be terrified to. I remember like knocking on the door, and it had like a picture of a gun pointing at you, like, "This is how I protect my house." And I was like, "Fuck it." and
That's intimidating, dude.
Yeah, and so I knocked on the door, and she opens it up, and I end up just sitting with this lady for hours, and she's talking to me about her, her world and what she grew up in, and how farming was actually really important to her, and then also she was constantly talking to me about like, well, I love your vision, but don't mix blood. You don't want to do that. And I was like, I do, but I'll be careful.
What you mean by don't mix blood?
Well, like, I think we're so focused on me and mine, right? Like we all have a gang mentality or a tribal mentality, that we isolate ourselves within a certain group, and we codify our importance based off of that, right? And I think now with this new paradigm, we have to really shake those traditions, right? It's not red team, it's not blue team, it's we all live here in Utah. We live here in Salt Lake. Let's share what we have together, right? Let's stop dividing each other, right? Because it's like, okay, yeah, you may have had beef with that person in the past, or like you don't even really know them, but for whatever reason you don't like them. But that's where underneath the shade of a fruit tree is tremendously healing experience. Yeah. Because it's really hard to just be mad at somebody while you're literally picking life-giving sustenance from a tree. Yeah. Or or tilling the earth. I've seen very few fights in the garden, if any, right? And so, but unfortunately, we're like, we isolate ourselves in these little caves of what we define, like in this apartment complex, which is, it's nice on looking at it, but it does separate us from one another, right? Yeah. We all live in these little boxes that are just stacked on top of one another. Yep. And you walk past somebody on the stairs, and hi, but are you really like talking with them? Are you conversing? How is your life interconnected with them? You literally sleep, your head sleeps maybe 20 feet away from them, but how are you really engaging with these people that are around you all of the time? And we've just kind of locked ourselves in these prisons, and that paradigm has to be broken now. Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes from long-term isolation and people having these conversations with themselves. Like I know when I am
on my screen a majority of the day, for example, whether it's at work for 8 hours on a computer, or I'm on my phone for social media, or I'm binge watching Netflix or Disney Plus, or any of these things, I'm removing myself from social interaction. The more I go back into social interaction, I find that my anxiety spikes, and it's because I'm having these conversations of like, oh, I want to say hi to this person, but then there's this fear in the back of my head of like, they're going to say something mean back to you, or then they're going to be like upset. But the cool thing about it, as soon as I stopped looking and being sucked in these phones, these screens, and start being more mindful about my day and being more present with what I'm doing, I started realizing I was numbing myself. And by numbing myself, I didn't want to talk to anybody else. I didn't want to deal with anybody else. Especially because if I was vulnerable, people would be like, well, just stop doing X, Y, and Z. And I knew that. But I just didn't want to give that part of myself up. And the long part of this long-winded rant is just to be like, is that us as society, if once I started taking care of my mental health and being more like, you know what, I'm going to say hi to this person. Because I also know how it is to be a person that's just walking past people and me being in a grumpy mood and have somebody be like, hey, and just like be nice to me. Like it changes it and it almost spreads, and it's like I think emotions are like a virus. And I think that if a negative emotion can spread more negative emotions, and a positive emotion can spread positive emotions. And so I think that it's cool where you are with every relationship, they say the healthiest ones have a third component to it, whether it's God, or some couples do drugs, some couples it's working out, whatever that third tripod, because it just like if you can blow something over, and unless it's a pyramid, I think geometrically speaking is like the most like secure shape. And so it's like if you have this co-op where like everybody, it's that third leg to connect with somebody, you can connect with pretty much anybody. I mean, I've connected with so many people that I wouldn't have connected with had I not played video games, for example. Like I knew guys who I was just like, I don't like who that person is, and I put a label on them, and then I started playing this game, and I started realizing, wow, there's more depth to this person than just this person I thought that he's trying to play himself as. Because the more you realize and interact with people and having places where you can come together, pick fruit, work, and just do what we for generations have done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean that feeling of the bazaar needs to come back. We need those, those markets that are happening on a monthly basis, but like not just a packaged like. I really like farmers markets. They're really cool. But like, so if you're cultivating it in a 3-block radius and everybody's getting to know you, you're constantly interacting with them and handing them something tangible, which is food. And then whatever comes after that, like whatever relationship or friendship is great. Right. But, it's cool because then you have these monthly events where everybody gets together. There's no pressure. There's fire. There's music. And then that's where the real relationship building connects. But also, it's way more sustainable, right? Because to run a farmer's market, for 1 week, I think it's 1 week. I should look it up. It's 1 week or 1 month. It's the same for the cost of running a farmer's market. You could run a brick and mortar shop for 365 days.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah, and not only that, you have all these farmers.
When you're talking about the cost of saying, "Hey, I want to go set up a booth here," or
no,
you're saying
I'm
the
talking
total
about
cost of
the
everybody
total
there?
cost of everybody coming.
Okay.
The carbon, like all of the money that's coming into the farmers market to make it a thing.
Okay.
Right? And not only that, it's usually the bigger farmers that are dominating. They have more produce. You have all these smaller farmers that they're all competing. They all grow the same things, and the bigger flashier tents are the ones that people are stopping by and grabbing the tomatoes and whatnot. And that's why, again, I think this model is like booming so quickly, is because we're not having to pack up a huge van, spend hours harvesting the day before, and throw all of our stuff into a van and then rush off to the Salt Lake Farmers Market and set up our tent right next to somebody who's growing the exact same thing we are, and then distributing it. No, we're reaching out to the people that are around us, directly around us, and if it takes a little bit more time, that's fine, right? But like, sustainable growth is really important, and instead of harvesting all these plants and then throwing them away because, oh man, I didn't, or composting them because I harvested way too much and I was hoping to sell a little bit more at the farmer's market. No, I can be a little slower, more methodical with how I harvest my crops. I can, I have my walk-in cooler where I can store a lot of it, and people can just come to my walk-in cooler, grab their CSA. It's a more sustainable model, and it just takes a little bit of connection building, and that's where, instead of going to a farmer's market, they do have all these really cool art exhibits and stuff like that, bring that to your farm.
Yeah.
Make your farm the bee's knees.
Yeah.
Make your, and people want to be immersed in nature, right? They're going to a park that, again, is just Kentucky bluegrass and some trees and concrete, and they're going to these parks. It's like, they would love the experience so much more if somebody's playing the guitar, singing their heart out as they're walking through and they're seeing all these row crops and chickens running around. Then they're starting to immerse themselves in growing life, right?
Yeah.
Rather than this stagnant, depiction of what nature should be that, our masculine mind thinks, oh yes, they must have square grids.
Yeah.
No, it's like, let's have a little bit of chaos. Let's interject a little femininity into this bitch.
Yeah.
And have some just life growing all abundant around us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I think is really cool, and I think that's the missing piece, and I think that's why urban farmers struggle so hard, because they're not fully tapping into the potential that they could be, right? They're delivering CSAs far away from where their main location is, so they're still having to drive around and whatnot. So I think that's really important, and it just,
So who I think that's all very important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think is your main competitor? Like, if you were to replace something, because I feel like a lot of the life is all about law of subtraction, but you have to replace it with something. And it has to be a better version. Like, for example, I sold my PlayStation recently. This is on a personal level. I sold my PlayStation because I was developing too much time towards it. And I was like, what am I going to replace my time at PlayStation with? And it was like this podcast, going to the gym, and replacing. So I'm not just sitting there twiddling my fingers being like, I want to play my PlayStation. I'm just thinking about this thing almost on an addictive level.
Yeah.
And so for me, I have a Macy's right here. Would you guys essentially be like, you don't even have to go to the grocery store because we're gonna have everything you guys need, or is it gonna start with? Are you guys see yourself going into meat, or where's your is it just gonna start with vegetables?
I don't know.
It doesn't matter if you've gone that far. I'm just kind of curious as far as where you see it going.
I think it's gonna formulate into a entity of its own creation. I don't know, it'd be great to take on supermarkets head on and whatnot, but I think ultimately, and ultimately it will to some respects. But I mean, at this stage, it's more just about giving that sense of communal bonding and resiliency, right? Because if people are maintaining their food away from markets and keeping their money within their local municipality and neighborhood, I guess the enemy would be the current paradigm, the current societal structure that we have through this
more convenient,
this unstructured capitalist society that we have. It's like, okay, money's not necessarily evil, but we need to use it because to me, it's just an energetic exchange. But right now, we're just throwing our energy all over the place. Like we got to think globally, but act locally, right? So like, I'm not going to change the presidential candidate.
Yeah.
I can't affect what's happening nationally, but I can affect what's happening next door.
Absolutely.
So if we're thinking locally and we're building systems where I'm more reliant on my neighbor rather than some structure or system that's so far out of my realm of influence, then I begin to solidify my own ability and capacity for self-determination and those around me, because then they start to contribute their skills. Like, I had no idea how to build a walk-in cooler, but my neighbor does, and he did. He helped me, I was his bitch.
So now you can do it if you wanted to.
And like those pulling those skills together is really, really important, right? But right now we're outsourcing them. We're outsourcing our skills and working for these entities and using our skills, our God-given talents, towards receiving money from afar, and then spending it again on commodities and goods that are going to these outside influences or corporations where they have no real roots in the community, right? We're not working with mom and pop shops. So I guess the main enemy is the current paradigm of these unregulated corporations that are just essentially siphoning our energy from our people. And it's like, no, let's keep that into the community. Let's empower our neighbors. Let's empower our children and educate them on how they can live independently from, these, I guess you could say kingdoms.
Yeah.
The kingdom of Walmart, no, we don't need that. We don't need them. Right. And so that's what I would say the paradigm is. And it's a big thing to tackle, but if you start small, literally by growing a freaking tomato bush.
Yeah. Well, even 3 blocks, but like if you were like, hey, I'm going to take over the world with this idea, that sounds impractical.
Yeah.
But if you were to tell me that like, hey, we're going to open a co-op every 1 to 2 years in a different block, or whatever your growth is, the cool thing about it is there's going to be sooner or later a point where it's a tipping point for your business where you're not having to go out as much and people are just spreading the word. And I think it all starts with like that people are more proud of what they work for. Like, and the food's going to taste better. Like, it's going to be more nourishing. Like, I was talking to my buddy, for example, and I had all these expired green beans I forgot to eat because I bought them at Costco, and Costco is just buy a lifetime supply of green beans. And he's like, well, Mikey, there's not even really any nutritional value in these green beans. And like, if you think about it, it's on like a rational level. It's like if these things are packaged to last for a year, like a year and a half, 2 years, and the average green bean on like a shelf is only supposed to last for like weeks. Like, what is going on? Like, what is that going into my body? And so I think it's very cool that you guys are essentially creating this transparent model where you literally can look around and see what's going into your food.
Well, and the cool thing is it's not even a new idea per se. The Mormon culture here in Utah had a strong tradition of cooperative economies. ZCMI was one of the largest cooperatives in the nation. Another example, and one of the models that we are following, is the Mondragon model in Spain. It's like close to the Basque region. It's a huge cooperative. They have multiple businesses. They have a nonprofit arm, and then they have the LLCs that have formed out of their membership. And in 2008, when the recession hit, the Mondragon cooperative, they have their own banking system. They have all of their own businesses. And so when the steel plummeted and all their steel workers didn't have a job anymore, they're all cooperative members. So they were like, oh man, that sucks. Well, let's train you how to be cooks. We have this need over here. We're going to train you how to be cooks. And they gave all of these steel workers, they still had a job, and they were protected and taken care of.
And you don't have to be a cook for the rest of your life. You can cook it for the period of time until you figure out what your next thing to do.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but they had the resiliency to do that because they're keeping the money within their structure, within their community. They're not outsourcing it into some imaginary stock land, where people make millions of dollars off speculation or anything like that. They are investing in what they can see and what they can feel within whatever their community needs. It's like, because our communities, kind of to bring it back to permaculture a little bit, is like, so the world is a living organism, and so are we. Like, our consciousness and the way that we interact with one another, we're also organism. We are an organism, the human race, and how we interact with each other is important, and whenever you have people expressing hate, whether it's based off of religion or race or whatever, that's almost like that is a symptom,
misunderstanding, really.
It's a sickness.
Yeah.
It's a sickness that's being expressed maybe from one individual, but it's a sickness that is just being replicated because we're hurting in some other respects. We're not understanding how to interact and connect with one another because we're not speaking anymore. We're isolating, and then we're getting all of these images and messages about what's happening based off of what some little box is telling us. And pictures and It's,
yeah, I mean, I don't have the TV. I just pay for just internet. But I mean, I still enjoy trying to look at news. But it is so hard nowadays to actually know what's going on in your community. Because I always talk to people about the media and who's the media owned by. The media is owned by these massive conglomerates, and so it doesn't pay to have KSL News do a story on why McDonald's isn't healthy for you. Because McDonald's is an advertiser who pays for their system, and they don't want to piss off their advertisers, and so there's always this certain thing of hey, we're gonna look blind eye over here, and then we're gonna put all this fear mongering and all these other, or over here, let's blind low. What are the celebrities doing? And all this stuff that doesn't impact your life. And I know the more that I chase this idea of I want to be a celebrity and let's see what celebrities are doing. I'm going to dress and act like a celebrity. I wasn't happy. I don't think anybody is when you're chasing and you're trying to be something other than you're not yourself. And what a cool way to figure out where you fit into something than this cooperative. Because a lot of people don't have purpose. I felt like I didn't have purpose until, honestly, about a year ago. When I decided that, I'm going to do this podcast. And I feel like my purpose is to help as many people as possible. And this podcast is to say, you have a story, you have something to share. How is this going to help people? And I see it helping people in so many ways. But I do want to kind of just have you break it down and summarize it. How does this help people?
So one of the main things that we've really been talking about is the community connection that's fostered, right? The friendships that are developed, the basic necessities and needs, of getting food delivered to them in a 3-block radius, building that independence from our current paradigm, current structures, and then also just improving the overall quality of life. When you look at across the street and you see a farm and all of this life and chickens and goats and all these things, you are a happier person. Your quality of life and the way that our world can be healed by reintroducing wildlife into our urban areas and whatnot, and reestablishing our ecosystems within the urban landscape, and allowing more connection not only with our human relations, but our animal relations as well, and understanding those things.
I think that's important. I want to hit that because I think that's one of the things that we have. We see these things as pests or these animals, get this bird out of my house or whatever, because you don't want to be bothered by it. But I think because we created these boxes that we live in, and we don't want the society, I think we've created this weird where you can only have pets, and everything that's not a pet is a pest. Unless it's from a distance, you're oh, look at it, it's beautiful. But as soon as a bear or an eagle or a wolf or whatever that thing you're staring at from far away, I mean, it could even be a rabbit. And I know there's down towards Sandy, there's this neighborhood where I go to visit my buddy, and there's just wild rabbits running around. And at first I saw a rabbit and I was like, what is somebody lose their pet rabbit? And I was like, oh, it doesn't have a collar on it. And I go to my buddies, he's like, yeah, they run all over, even during the winter. And it's just interesting to me that we have these pockets of like where animals are still thriving, but they're trying to thrive within neighborhoods now and probably hiding under houses and all these other things, where if you had this co-op, you essentially could have this place where animals could thrive and build relationships with humans, because over the years we've just been pushing them out. And no wonder why they're becoming more and more hostile towards us. Like I think of my brother who was telling me a story about his place, and his backyard, there was this like drain thing, and he had problems of raccoons coming up. And one time he was like out on the back of his porch, and this raccoon came up, and he kind of tried to like shoo it away with his broom. And the raccoon was like getting all like, but then you think about it, like that raccoon, like if it is conscious on any level, in which they've proven raccoons are very smart, and can be even trained as pets, like they've probably seen like animal catchers and these things that like, you know, create this where we could have this more beautiful relationship with animals. And I think animals are a great connection to like spirituality and to God, because they're more present than we ever will be, because their level of consciousness, maybe their level of consciousness is higher than ours, I don't know. But like, I do think that I mean, you don't see eagles and like hawks flying around carrying cell phones and worrying, they're just being, you know? And I think that when you're in an absolute state of being, like, and being present, that's where you find true happiness, and that's where you find the connectedness. And that's where even right now, like if I was not being present here with you, or even like you being present here with me, listening to me, you could be deciding, you know what, I want to talk about this next thing. And then you're removing yourself from this conversation where everybody could learn from something from somebody. And that's where I think the beauty of podcasts is, and that's where I want to start a podcast is, I feel like people are more willing to sit down and listen, and they might get 10, 20 minutes in and like, this isn't for me. But that's okay, because I think sooner or later an idea will be okay for them. Because I mean, you introduced, it's Ubuntu, how do you pronounce it?
Ubuntu, yeah.
Like I think you shared on Facebook this video a couple years ago, and I wasn't in a place where I was like, this is just a different term of socialism, and this is just a rebranding of socialism. But then, like, I mean, I think it's great because you started with something so simple. It's not politics. It's not changing anybody's really way of living, other than where are you getting your food from and where are you contributing your energy to. Sorry, I cut you off, and I was excited about the
you're
animal
on a good
thing.
tear there, brother. Yeah, so like to kind of solidify, how does this help? In a nutshell, it's ultimately, liberating people from current paradigms by, building community resilience through meeting the basic necessities like food, shelter, and water, and giving them community connection through activating local artists and communities, like community events. That's how it helps, is it brings community connection that ultimately leads towards self-actualization.
Awesome.
And I would say that's how it helps.
Awesome. Anything else you want to talk about before we call it a close?
No, I mean, it's just been a pleasure to be on here, and it was fun to geek out about where this vision is going, and I guess I actually do. We do work weeks. It's looking like every Wednesday we get together at the Village Cooperative, and everybody is welcome. Even if you want to just come around and just hang out and see what it's about, or if you want to start contributing, it's been really cool to see.
Wednesdays at what time?
It's at 7 p.m.
Okay.
And we just get together, and it's cool. You have people working in one corner working on videos and video promotions. We have people working on back end stuff. We have people talking about what seeds what seeds we're starting for the season. We have the farmer's corner, essentially. We have the media. We have the artists that are planting a really cool rose garden made out of recycled wood that we'll plant on the cooperative. And it's just a cool way of like seeing how creativity can be manifested and your skills can be manifested in whatever. So I don't care if you're, a singer or whatever. Maybe you just come and you sing while everybody else is working, and but you're working too. You're sharing your gift.
Yeah, music's
and so
amazing.
Yeah, and so it doesn't really matter, and it's a very organic thing, right? And people can come by there and check out the village, and it's a very non-intrusive way. We just kind of
What are your typical hours?
What?
Of operation? Like when are you guys there?
We're there all the time. Somebody's always there.
But I mean, somebody could show up at 6 a.m. and somebody be there.
6 a.m. They just might get a grumpy, like,
I need my coffee.
No, I would say our basic hours of operation are about 8 to 7 p.m.
Okay.
8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, is there anywhere people can follow you on social media? Or is there like you said, you're the website? You tell me the website.
So createthevillage.org is our website. You can follow us on Facebook, The Village Cooperative, and then also Instagram, The Village Cooperative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time, Darin. I think this is something that's going to impact society and locally, and I hope it goes globally.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank you for your time, showing up here and sharing your knowledge and putting yourself out there, because I know it's not sometimes the easiest thing to do, knowing that you're getting recorded and I mean, I feel like I'm going to say a million dumb things before my journey of this podcast kind of ends. But I appreciate you coming on. You're fabulous. I'd love to have you on any other time if you ever have an event or whatever you want to promote. Is there any events coming up?
So on April 18th, we have our first Residence Building Roots event.
Okay.
So that's because we only do that in the summer, because it's hard to have live performances in the park when it's freezing cold.
Yes.
That's it's from 6 to 9, and it's on April 18th. But that's quite a bit of ways out there. And then as the season comes along, we'll start having garden installs and whatnot, because we do garden installations for people. But we'll have those happen throughout the March and April.
Okay.
And then so the best thing for events is follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll be informed, and
Awesome. Well, stay in touch with me, because if you need any of my talents, I'd be more than happy to help you out. So,
all right, brother. Sounds good.
Eddie, thanks for being here, and thanks for being here too as well.
All right.
Have a good night.